I saw a post recently by Patrick David which reminded me that we should not compromise how we are based on whatever situation we're in. And so apologies for me acting rashly and dishing some stuff back, as I felt like I've been under the constant barrage. That I was constantly negged and the butt of a lot of jokes for 6 months, so I felt like releasing some stuff through humor and expressing myself as well. But after I could express the reality of the situation, I felt a lot lighter, hence the humor was coming back. Perhaps it would have been wiser if I didn't express some of the things, so apologies for that. In Shaolin monasteries, they teach the monks not only meditation and things of that nature, but also martial arts for a certain reason. Although I don't claim to be a monk by any means, my training in martial arts and that sort of nature occurred only until I was a teenager. Because once I was 18, I had an out-of-body experience, and this shifted all of my reality. I woke up one night floating above my bed, a meter above my bed. I could look to the right, see the wall. I could look up, we had a ceiling fan, which was like a few feet away. And I could look to the left and see out the window, but I could not move my body. I was still in sleep paralysis. And once I woke up, that experience felt so real that I just sat up and I turned the light on and I was like, whoa, that didn't feel like a dream. The next day I went on the internet and I was just like, okay, Google, I got a question you can't answer. And I was like, I floated outside my body. And I was dumbfounded to find that there was infinite pages based on this as well. This got me curious for a year, reading about all sorts of things from astral projection, energy, chakras, aliens, all sorts of conspiracy theories, and a lot of spiritual meditations and things of that nature as well. And after a year, it felt like my mind was like fully filled with all these ideas of how reality could be. And I had some surreal experiences as well. I had started meditation in this year, sometimes, and after 10 minutes of meditation, sometimes I would meditate and I wouldn't be able to see my foot. My foot would look like space. Or I'd meditate and I'd go to the bathroom mirror and I can see my shoulders and my neck, but my face would look like space. So reality had really started glitching, but it was always spontaneous and random. And at this time, I had never explored any psychedelics or anything of that nature either. And after a year, after reading of all of these things, it felt like, okay, this is like cool. Like my mind is like fully like excited and humored by all these things, but I really wanted to bring it to reality. And then started 3 years of daily practices where I'd explore a practice for a month at a time. 3 to 4 weeks is how long it takes to reprogram the subconscious to the first level. And once that's done, then for the next 3 to 4 weeks, it programs from that level as well. So because we're all unique as well, so some practices may work well for some and some for others. So I'd explore various practices for that long, see what worked, and if it worked, I'd continue that practice, sometimes adding different practices as well. And after 3 years, I reached like some really, really interesting states and experiences that I've expressed previously where like even for a month at a time, like my dopamine door was just open. After gathering mana for those 2.5 years from spiritual practice, what I did was rather than doing a gratitude practice just in the morning, every moment that I was aware and present, I would find 5 things to be grateful for and feel it. So it's like 500 to 1,000 things a day feeling grateful for. So I do this for a month. The next month, it's kind of like my dopamine door was open and I felt like 30% of MDMA, even though I was sober. And I would feel this for the month. And during this time, though, I would stop doing the practice. So at the end of the month, I would go back to my previous state of functioning, back to the same level of the subconscious earlier. And I went through like 4 cycles of this. And then after that, it really, really shifted how I functioned. And I lost that innate desire to seek for spiritual levels. While it was a momentary state, I don't label myself to be a certain way, having reached that state, because it's just like practice, you know. If we practice doing something for a while, we can reach a certain state, but once we stop the practice, we drop the state as well. So I don't claim to be enlightened or any of these things, you know, it was just an experience at the time. And then there was like 3 years of that, and then I stopped. This was probably like 6-7 years ago when I stopped. I stopped when actually I moved to like a spiritual island and was living in a kind of lucid reality where there was not really a proper structure of society. Like everyone would just live however they want. Like we would just wear shorts and like not even shoes or like shirts or anything. And it was a pretty lucid reality where we functioned in all sorts of ways. Kind of like living in a festival essentially, without that much music, of course. And so yeah, that was really interesting. After 3 years of that though, it took me the first 2 years and then I started to see through the love and light and see more of reality. And then I sort of shifted as well of like viewing myself as an interdimensionary being to seeing that, okay, if I'm a human as well, I must have chosen to incarnate as a human for some reason. And then was okay, apart from exploring all these interdimensionary things in my whatever conscious experiences, I was like, what's the most interesting experience I can have while I'm on Earth? And something I would humor before when I was in my spiritual journey was kind of like doing things like surfing and astral projecting at the same time, which of course is a bit far out. But the things that are far out actually are what excite me. Like I like to do things that haven't been done before. And then came the idea of painting while skydiving. And since this seemed like a really far out idea, I don't know, there's some thrill about doing something that hasn't been done before, although it had been done before, I'd yet to know. And at the time, I received very strong intuition to create a masked identity for my artist persona once creating that. I spoke to a friend about this and we kind of like laughed off the idea, and then I created it with myself, which led me down the road of Instagram. So I kind of had made a pact with the universe that I would do like one skydive art piece and then get back to doing some sort of work which aids spiritual development in some sense. Because before I was managing the yoga school for a couple of years, we had around like 200 yoga teachers that got certified via us as well. Reflecting on that, what I did was once I did one skydive art, I kind of got into the trap of Instagram where I was like, ooh, there are people who are doing like interesting things and living off that. And so I kept creating more art like that as well. But this sort of shifted me back to a very 3D reality and out of purpose. And even though the process was very exciting, I find that even though like managing a yoga school may not be as thrilling as jumping out of an airplane and painting, it is more fulfilling, to be honest. 200 hours of yoga, of course, creates a lot of like shifts and transformation in people as well. But personally, yoga was one of the practices I explored just for maintenance. That was in my core practice. And I'm driven towards creativity. Before I got sidetracked into the adrenal art, I felt like it would be really interesting to create these spaces where people can come for a week or 2 weeks and explore all sorts of creativity, sort of like expressive arts, where it's a blend of art, theater, writing, dance, music. Doing so in a way where the form, the result is not the purpose, but the process is the purpose as well. And a bit of yoga and breath work and stuff as well in the morning to keep the body and the energy in a good place, but then having the rest of it and the transformational effect that creativity can have. Like even going for improv theater, after like laughing for an hour or two, like when doing mundane things in the day, kind of like do it with the zest of life, you know, like washing the dishes, but dancing or singing while doing so. Before moving to the island though, I did work with kids for a while. What we had was creative classes, but we also we would kind of have bite-sized bits of spirituality as well. So you would introduce them to like imaginative meditations, a bit of like gratitude and mindfulness practices as well, in very fun and interesting ways as well. So it's not like going for like a 2-hour breathwork class or something like that, which is pretty profound, but to hold the children's attention. But I felt like at the time as well, like the reach of the to the children was like working with classes was cool. It has an effect on a certain amount of people, but not that much. So what I feel would be really interesting is like what's really fun for kids is like to have a cartoon. So like Avatar, The Last Airbender, Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, etc. They focus on these concepts of energy and things as well. But what could be really cool is creating a system kind of like Dora as well, where they see all these characters doing all these interesting things, but then they actually pause and then they actually do the practices to power up to be like those characters as well. And I find that given the nature of our new generation that is growing up with technology, they're going to be having a lot of life's issues and troubles at a much younger age as well. Like for example, like before when people were like going through all the social stuff of like, you know, of viewing other people and then viewing ourselves and, you know, seeing how people look like, etc. That would be at a later age, but nowadays on Instagram it's a lot younger. So you see children as well that are cloaking themselves as we do at an elder age, at a much younger age. So they deal with a lot of these issues as well. So I feel like rather than reaching a stage where people have a breakdown and then require these tools, it'd be really cool to have them have these tools seeded to them as well, where they have practiced all these things as well, and it's sort of embodied in their muscle memory, their DNA, and their mind. And then whenever they require, they can go back to these things as well. And I feel like through this way, we can have like a really, really strong impact on like all the children of a new generation and have them practicing gratitude, a bit of meditation, a bit of mindfulness, so that when things appear in life, they can deal with it a lot better as well. And they have a toolkit as well of how to process things. And to do so in a fun, creative way, where it could not only apply to children, but to adults and teenagers and everything as well, will be pretty profound.